The Association of American Medical Colleges is pleased to welcome you to today's February 2025 MCAT testing year update for examinees. We are recording and will make the archive available after. We'll email you once we post it. We did mute all participant audio. If you need help, send us a message. The presentation includes time for Q&A. You may submit a question at any time by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. It's now my pleasure to welcome Dawn Smith. Dawn.
Thanks so much, Jennifer, and welcome everyone. My name is Dawn Smith. I'm the MCAT Outreach and Engagement Manager, and I'm joined here today by my colleagues, Tyler Campbell, Director of MCAT Administration, Catherine Bugbee, Director of MCAT Accommodation Services, Kara Gowaltney, Director of MCAT Security, and Lauren Vergara, MCAT Product Manager. So thank you all so much for joining us today. The focus of this webinar is to provide an overview of the 2025 testing year, the registration process, and the resources we have to help you prepare. And I'd like to take a minute and welcome you on this journey. The MCAT exam in many ways is the first step towards applying to medical school. And I want you to think of the exam as a tool that can help you get ready for medical school. The science knowledge assessed in the exam, the critical thinking required of it, and the way you're being asked to prepare and study for the exam are skills that you're going to need to help throughout medical school and into your residency. And at the AAMC, we want to help you showcase all of the important competencies medical schools are looking for in prospective students. So the MCAT exam is one of those tools to help you do that along with all of the other important information that you'll submit in your application. So first, we'd like to get started with a question. Now, we've had hundreds of people register from all over the world, and we'd love to know if this is your first time attending an AAMC webinar. So feel free to answer the question, and your responses are anonymous. Okay, great. It looks like we've had a lot of first-time webinar attendees, and many people have also attended a session with us before. So thanks so much for spending your time with us today. We're thrilled to have you here. And while we'll be focused on the MCAT exam, we'll be sharing additional information about other ways the AAMC can support your journey with us. So let's get started. This is our agenda for today. We'll be describing the 2025 testing year and the registration process. We'll go over what you can expect on test day. We'll share updates on our preparation resources to help you get ready for the exam. And of course, we're going to leave some time for Q&A and address many of the MCAT questions that you've submitted in advance. So I'm going to start off by going over some of the basics of the exam, since we got a few questions about the content. The MCAT exam is a standardized, computer-based, multiple-choice exam taken at a testing center. Now, all United States and many Canadian medical schools require you to submit recent MCAT scores with your application for regular admission to medical school. The exam tests you on the knowledge and skills medical school students, faculty, and residents have identified as key prerequisites to be ready for and succeed in medical school. It will be assessing your problem solving and critical thinking skills, as well as your knowledge of foundational scientific concepts and principles necessary for the study of medicine. But your MCAT scores are really just one part of your application. Medical schools are also looking closely at your transcripts, your work, and your volunteer experiences, and they're reading your letters of recommendation and your essays. They want to learn how you're going to fit in with their school's missions and goals. So you want to remember that it's also important to get to know the schools you want to apply to. So you want to take some time to learn about them and how your interests and goals match up with each school. So next, we're going to talk about the structure of the exam, and Kara will talk a little bit later about how this fits into test day. The exam is divided into 4 multiple choice sections, and there is no writing section on the exam. There's 2 natural sciences sections, a behavioral and social sciences section, and a critical analysis and reasoning section. These sections will be testing content found in introductory biology, physics, psychology, sociology, and introductory general and organic chemistry and first semester biochemistry. Now, to learn what content is tested in these sections, you can start by looking at the official content outline on our website, and that will provide all the concepts and skills tested on the exam. So you can access that in the free resources section on our MCAT Prep pages or through the MCAT Prep Hub. So thank you again for being here. We wish you all the best as you start on this journey. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tyler, who will talk about the 2025 testing year.
Hey, Don, thank you so much. And again, big thank you to everybody who's taken the time out of their day to join us this afternoon. I know it's a busy time, so we really appreciate you taking this seriously and listening to what we have to say. So again, my name is Tyler Campbell, and I'm the Director of MCAT Administration. And I'm just going to be talking a bit about the 2025 testing year, along with a few other topics that might be helpful to you as you prepare for the MCAT exam. So, real quick overview of the exam. And like previous years, the 2025 testing year is running from January through September. We do not test in February or in the months of October through December. And the decision to do that is really just based on historical patterns of testing and examinee preference that's been shared with us, as well as admission cycles for medical schools. Um, there are 30 exam dates in the United States in 2025, and all exam dates are beginning at 8 a.m. local time at your testing center this year. And like previous years, scores are reported 30 to 35 days after your exam date via the MCAT score reporting system. And you could find, if you're interested in a specific exam date's score release date, you could find that on our website. All right, so this is our testing calendar, and more specifically, this is our testing calendar for your examinees in the United States. As I mentioned before, there are 30 exam dates spread out as you're seeing here. The calendar is very slightly different for our Canadian examinees and international examinees. So if you are joining us from Canada or from another country, please go to our website and you can see the Canadian calendar as well as which dates are being offered in your home country. Note that we have made most of our exams scheduled on Fridays and Saturdays. This is our understanding is preferred by our examinees, and hopefully you'll be able to find a convenient date. And while we have certainly made every effort to avoid any sort of holidays, please note that you should very closely check your calendar, please, before you schedule an exam date to make sure it's free and you can attend, because once you make an appointment, you can't change it without incurring any sort of rescheduling fees. So please be careful when you do choose a date on our calendar. All right, so one of the more common questions that people ask us is, when is the right time to take the MCAT exam? And it seems like a very simple question, but in reality, it's a bit more difficult to answer. And the reason is because it does vary so much from one individual to the next. I think the simplest answer is really when you're confident that you're going to be ready to take that test. But here are a few things to consider while you're pondering when to sit for the exam. So the first one is, when are you going to go to medical school? Are you planning to go straight from your undergraduate program, or are you going to take some time off, a gap year maybe? So start there and think backwards from your medical school's deadlines and the application year, and then go back and that's when you want to target to take the MCAT exam. Think about if you might need to test more than once. If so, you might want to leave yourself the option to test again later in the year by scheduling your first exam earlier in the year. It also gives you more time, if you need to review your score and any potential areas for further development before your next exam. So keep that in mind. And finally, do you feel comfortable with the content? Keep in mind that MCAT doesn't have any required courses to take before you register, but if you feel like you need a little bit more time to prepare based on what is being tested in the exam, consider a date maybe a little bit later in the testing year to give you some more study and prep time. Now, finally, we recommend that you definitely review the AAMC's Medical School Admissions Requirement Resource. It's called MSAR for short, and it includes just a huge amount of information that would be super helpful for you as you are planning to take your exam, including deadlines and things like that. So definitely take a look at the MSAR. You'll see the URLs at the bottom of this slide there. So up next, I'm going to talk a little bit about testing limits. So which, as you could probably tell, means that there are limits to the number of times you can take the MCAT exam. Now, within a single year, you can take it 3 times. You could take it 4 times over the course of 2 consecutive years, and you could take it 7 times in your lifetime. So what that means is if you take the test the maximum of 3 times in 2025, you're only going to be allowed to test once next year in 2026. That's the 4th attempt within 2 consecutive years. Keep in mind that no-shows and voids do count towards these attempt limits, but they will not appear on any score report sent to medical school. Cancellations that you make before the cancellation deadline will not count against these limits. So we've really found that the vast majority, and I mean the vast majority of people, will be able to meet their testing needs within these testing limits. But of course, we understand things happen and we will consider exceptions from time to time. So if you ever find yourself running into a testing limit, we will accept appeals for an exception. To do that, you just have to submit a service request within the MCAT registration system. Just keep in mind that we only consider appeals once you've actually hit a limit. So there's no proactive requests for additional attempts. You do have to be at a limit before we will consider such a request. All right, so the next slide is about MCAT scores, and you'll see here what an MCAT score report looks like. As I mentioned before, MCAT scores are released 30 to 35 days after your exam date. And you're going to see that you have 5 scores on your score report, 1 for each of the 4 individual sections, and then 1 total score. The total score is basically all of your individual sections added up. And you'll see that there's also a range of the confidence band for each of the individual scores, as well as for your overall MCAT total score. Great. So I want to take a moment real quick to talk about the AAMC's Fee Assistance Program. And it's really an excellent resource for financial resource for our examinees. And I certainly would recommend you take a look at it if you think you might benefit. So this program assists those examinees who, without financial assistance, would not be able to take the MCAT exam and apply to medical schools that use the AMCAS application. Approval for the program is tied to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services poverty guidelines, and applicants are approved if each household reported in the application has an income that is less than 4 times the national poverty level for that respective family size. So a few things to keep in mind here as you consider the fee assistance program. It's open now, so if you think you're eligible or might be, you should definitely apply as soon as possible, leaving at least 5 business days in advance of when you would like to use the benefit. Parental financial information is required for all examinees under the age of 26 at the time of application submission. And the fee assistance program is open to anyone with a US-based address. Additionally, for the 2025 testing year, the AAMC and the Association of Faculties of Medicine of Canada, or AFMC, are administering a fee assistance program for Canadian examinees in financial need. Fee assistance program benefits for Canadian examinees include access to all of our online AAMC MCAT official prep products and the same reduced scheduling fees that we'll be talking about in a minute for the US-based fee assistance applicants. If you are a Canadian joining us today and you're interested in learning more about this program, please take a look at the link below at the bottom of this slide. So we've talked a little bit about fee assistance. Here's some of the benefits, which are really excellent if you qualify for them. So for the MCAT benefits, some of the biggest ones are you're getting a reduced scheduling and rescheduling fees. You will receive access to all online AAMC official prep products, and we'll be hearing quite a bit more about prep products coming up later in the presentation. And there is the opportunity to be considered for a stipend for an updated psychoeducational or medical evaluation for those students who have a history of testing accommodations. Do be aware that examinees have to apply for this benefit separately. So if you think you might be eligible for that, please check out our MCAT accommodations website for more information. Now, beyond MCAT, other benefits included are an AMCAS application fee waiver, which covers up to 20 medical schools, access to the MSAR database that I mentioned previously in this presentation, a waiver of registration fees for the preview readiness exam, and a discount for the ARAS application, which will come later in your career. And finally, as I mentioned before, benefits are available for our Canadian examinees who must apply through AFMC. Now, keep in mind that you must apply and be approved for fee assistance before you schedule an MCAT exam or you apply to medical school through AMCAS. Benefits are not retroactive, so definitely hold off until you get a decision on your request before you pay for an MCAT exam or an AMCAS application fee. The good news is the fee assistance program is pretty quick. Just please allow to make sure at least 5 business days for your request to be processed. Okay, so that's it for the fee assistance program. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the MCAT, to the email address at the bottom of the slide, or check out the website there as well. And with that, I am going to hand off the presentation to my colleague, Dr. Katie Bugbee, who's going to talk a bit about testing accommodations.
Thanks, Tyler. Excuse my voice today. I have a bit of a cold, but happy to be here with everyone and sharing a little bit about our accommodations program. If you're not already aware, we want you to know that the AAMC is committed to providing everyone with an opportunity to demonstrate their proficiency, on the exam, including individuals with disabilities. About 2% of our examinees test with accommodations each year. Some examples of disabilities or medical conditions that might result in the need for accommodations, that's based on an individual person's needs, but those include chronic medical conditions such as diabetes, vision impairments, learning disability, ADHD. This is just a sample of the conditions for which somebody might seek accommodations, but it's certainly not exhaustive. Examples of some commonly provided accommodations include extra time, either in the form of extra testing time or extra break time, having a medical device or other type of medical supply in the testing room, separate testing rooms. Again, this is just a sampling of the accommodations that we offer, but it gives you some ideas to start thinking about. Next slide. So we have a lot of great information on our website that if you think you might qualify for accommodations, I encourage you to go on the website and kind of do a thorough review. But I'm going to share some suggested first steps today just to get you started. Most importantly, I would suggest, again, if you think you might qualify, start early so that you have enough time for all the steps in the process. And that includes understanding more about the process, which again, you can find all that information on the website, collecting your documentation that's needed to support your application, time for your application to be reviewed, and then also time to schedule your exam with accommodation. So you want to factor in all those steps when you determine when you might need to apply. Again, review the website, and a couple of things that I would encourage you to focus on when you're initially getting started. On our homepage, we have an introduction video which tells you a little bit about the process. Again, some important things to keep in mind. I would review, we have information on our website about the standard testing conditions, and in particular points out things that you might want to consider as you're thinking about the adjustments or the accommodations that might be needed to address any limitations that you have related to your condition. So looking at those standard conditions helps you decide whether or not you need an adjustment. Again, we have recommended submission dates, and that's based on exam date. So once you have an idea about when you might want to test, it's a chart, you can look at the chart and determine when is the last recommended submission date for your test date, and then you can work backwards from there in terms of your timeline. And then also pay particular attention to the application requirements in the evaluation guidelines. That helps you understand the information that we need to review your request and make a determination about what accommodations may be supported. We have an application system where it's for both MCAT and preview accommodations. The link to it is right on all of our web pages. It is where you go to submit your application and all the supporting documentation. It's secure and it allows for efficient processing, so all the documentation is submitted together. You also access your determination letters there. It's a place where you can go to, there's sometimes other accommodations related requests, and that's where you go to submit those service requests. And again, as I mentioned, but it's new this testing year, is that our accommodations application system provides one centralized place for you to request accommodations for both MCAT and preview. So that's new this testing year. If you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to us at accommodations@aamc.org. And again, there's the information about our website, so you can go and access all of that information. Thanks very much, everyone. And I think back to Tyler.
Yep, back to me. If my oh, there's my video. Sorry about that. Back to me. And yeah, but now we'll be talking a bit more about our registration opening coming up soon for our July through September exam dates, which will be on Wednesday, February 19th, and that's at noon Eastern time. Our March through June dates are open now and will continue to be available for scheduling beyond February 19th as well. So next up is some registration tips for you as you prepare for the big day on February 19th. So the registration system is open now and will remain open for registration, or that is by filling out your profile, until 8 a.m. on February 19th. The system will be completely closed, shut down beginning at 8 a.m. in the morning of the 19th, and then will reopen a few hours later at noon when registration for the July through September dates becomes available. So in that time leading up to February 19th, we hope you'll take a little bit of time to commit to understanding our various agreements and policies that you will be held to before, during, and after your exam. And this includes reading through the MCAT Essentials and the examinee agreement, which will be discussed later in the presentation. You'll also receive several emails before your exam that have links to the essentials, and this can also be found on the website and in the MCAT registration system. So to reiterate, you will not be able to select your July through September exam date before noon on the 19th, but you can log into the MCAT registration system to fill out your profile in advance. This is not required, and it can be completed on the 19th or whenever you go to schedule your appointment. But if you take the time to log in and complete your profile, it will save you some time when registering on test day and will help us move through any backlog or line of others that are trying to get in to schedule their appointments as well. Do keep in mind that dates and locations are available on a first come and first served basis. We do expect a large demand on opening day. The good news is that we will be having a waiting room in place to help to control that demand. We ask that you not log in many hours early or anything like that. That doesn't help. The line for the exam, or rather for the waiting room, will start 10 minutes before our noon opening time. So everyone that gets there before 11:50 a.m. Eastern time is essentially going to be given a spot in line at 11:50. Anyone that comes in after 11:50 will be given the next spot in line. So by all means, if you want to show up to log in a few minutes before then, 11:45, that's fine, just to make sure you can get into the system. That's great, but there's no need to log in hours early or anything like that. Also, while in the waiting room, you'll be able to sign up to be notified when it's your turn. So you don't have to sit at the computer for a long period of time. You can get up, go get some coffee or what have you, and you'll get an email letting you know it's time to log in. When you do that, you'll receive a unique code that is just for you. So please make sure you do not share it with others, because if you do, you risk losing your place in line or getting kicked out to the back of the line, which is it's not helpful. So same for refreshing your page or opening multiple tabs and browsers. That doesn't really help you in the end, and it might lead to you losing your spot in line. So please don't do that. And finally, while you're in the waiting room, you will see an estimated wait time presented to you once the wait time hits less than 1 hour. So now let's talk about where you might want to test and how to find out what test centers are in your area. So you can find testing locations near you by navigating to the link on this slide and clicking on the link shown here. This tool does not show current availability. It is just a list of testing sites where we offer the exam. To see real-time scheduling availability, you can log into the MCAT registration system once we're open, and you can search for your location. You don't need to purchase a seat to be able to view what is currently available near you. All right, next slide, please. Now let's talk a bit about test day policies and really important information as you prepare. The first is the MCAT Essentials, which is really the source for any information governing the MCAT exam and all of its policies. So this is required reading if you're going to take the MCAT exam, and it touches on things like the MCAT registration system, understanding how our scheduling deadlines work, and our testing policies, including our testing ID policies, which are very important. It also touches on what you should expect when you arrive at the testing center and any actions that would potentially violate our rules. And additionally, I'd call out that the MCAT Essentials explains how you can report potential test day issues to us, and also how you can obtain and send your scores to your medical programs or medical schools. The MCAT Essentials is now in two formats. Sorry, next slide, please. So the MCAT Essentials is now in two formats. One is the PDF format that we've had for many years going back, and you could still access the PDF version on our website and in the MCAT registration system. But new this year, we've posted all of that same content to our website to allow you to browse to individual sections and get to the information you need quickly. So keep in mind, it all still is required for you to review and understand all of these policies, but we're hopefully by making it available in these two ways, it will give you the best opportunity to review that information at your convenience. So next slide, I want to talk about testing fees. Our fees are listed on this slide. Registration fee is $345, which is reduced to $140 for fee assistance examinees. And there is an international fee of $120, which does not apply to the United States or its territories or to our Canadian examinees. We also have deadlines of 60, 30, and 10 days before an exam, and the fees change based on which deadlines have passed. Keep in mind that all deadlines are 11:59 p.m. Local test center time on the deadline date indicated. We recommend that you really think about when you want to test and when you will be ready to test so you don't end up rescheduling, because it always will incur a fee. But if you do need to reschedule, just understand that it's better to do so earlier, because the cost will be lower to you. And it also gives somebody else who might want that seat the potential to take it and test where they want to test. So again, feel free to reschedule if you need to, but try to do it as soon as possible to minimize your cost and to make that seat available to somebody else. And to help you find a seat that is convenient to you, we have a Notify Me feature, which I want to talk briefly about. And what you'll find is if you log into the MCAT registration system to go schedule an appointment and your preferred test date and location combination is not available, you can click on this button to be notified if that does become available at a later time. And you can sign up to be notified for up to 5 unique combinations of location and date, and you will receive an email if a seat becomes available. Because of rescheduling patterns, we do see a lot of rescheduling happening around the 60, 30, and 10-day deadline. So definitely pay attention around that time, especially to see if you'll be notified of an opening. And do keep in mind that rescheduling fees will apply even if you're using the Notify Me feature. And I think with that, I'm passing the presentation off to my colleague, Kara Gwaltney.
Thank you, Tyler. Welcome, everyone. I'm Kara Gwaltney. I'm the Director of MCAT Security. As everyone before me has said, thank you so much for joining us and listening to what we have to say today. We're going to take a look at what you can expect upon arrival at the test center. The most important thing you must bring with you on exam day is your MCAT accepted ID. And most commonly, this will be your driver's license or a passport. We do accept other government issued IDs as long as they meet the following requirements. The ID must have an expiration date that is visible, and it must not be expired. If your ID is set to expire the day, the week, the month, or any other time before your exam, you're responsible for obtaining an updated ID prior to testing. If your ID is expired, you will be turned away and you will not be permitted to test. A quick note, we do not accept renewal paperwork or PDF versions of an ID that you received from the DMV or other source. The ID must contain a photo that can be used to positively identify you. And it must be tangible and whole. This means we can't accept a photocopy, a screenshot on your phone. We do not accept digital IDs, nor do we accept photographs. The ID cannot be clipped or hole punched. And finally, it must be in English. We also recommend that when you are filling out the pre-registration pages that you do not use the autofill function on your computer browser. We have had some incidences in the past where names have been changed accidentally to the payment name. So please make sure to either not use that function or to go back and double check everything. It will create a challenge as you get closer to your exam day if your name on your registration does not match your ID. All right, so in the green box on this screen, we've provided a list of the most commonly accepted IDs. If you have a government ID that it meets the criteria but is not on the list, please feel free to reach out to us to see if it will be verified. Our service contact center is excellent at fielding those calls and giving guidance on the ID that you may have. We also, on this slide, have some examples of IDs that are not accepted. So the most common, as I mentioned before, not accepted ID are those that have an expiration date extension sticker or have renewal paperwork. Folks, if you bring renewal paperwork, you will be turned away. You will not be permitted to test. We are aware that things happen. You might have applied for a new license when yours expired, but it hasn't arrived yet. Or maybe the passport office in your country is backed up. And we do offer an ID exception process for those who have started to get their new ID, but may not have their MCAT accepted ID in hand. So you must request an exception and provide all documents that are requested in support of the exception no fewer than 3 days before your exam. And ID exception requests are submitted under service requests in the MCAT registration system. Next slide. All right, the check-in policies. So when you arrive at the test center, you will need to have your government issued ID, and you must make sure that the name on your ID exactly matches the name on your registration. I'll give you some examples of challenges that folks have faced. So for example, if you go by Matt, but your ID says Matthew, your MCAT registration must say Matthew. If the name on your ID is Ashley Nicole Smith, but you go by your middle name, Nicole, your MCAT registration must say Ashley Nicole Smith. After you register for the exam, you will receive 4 emails leading up to your test day that will remind you to check your registration name. Please read these emails and verify. They're going to save you last-minute panic leading up to exam day and will reduce the possibility of being turned away on test day if they do not match. Once your ID has been reviewed, the test administrator will take a test day photo of you and they will capture your digital signature. I always stumble over that one. The signature indicates that you read the test day rules and that you agree to follow them. The biometrics that are collected will consist of a palm vein scan. This is completed during the admissions check-in, and then it will also be completed at every entry and exit from the test room, and then again at the conclusion of the exam. You are not permitted to waive the palm vein scan coming in and out of the test room or during the admissions process. Upon check-in, you will be handed a bag to place your cell phone and any other electronic devices like a smartwatch in for the entire duration of the exam. The bags are tamper evident and you will not allowed to access your device at any time once the exam starts until you are finished. And when you are finished, you will present your unopened bag to the test administrator. They will cut the bag open and you can retrieve your device. We ask that you please do not open the bag yourself. One of the steps that they complete in making sure that the exam was delivered securely is to ensure your device is still powered off. And then they will give you your certificate of completion or receipt for the day, whatever you want to call it, as confirmation that you completed the exam. Please do not bring any notes, review sheets, or other MCAT prep items with you on test day. If you are seen accessing anything of the like on a break, it will be documented by Pearson VUE and submitted to us as a security violation. That will then initiate an investigation that could cause some unnecessary stress and delay score reporting. So please leave the notes at home, in your car, somewhere. Do not bring them into the test center. All right, so next we have a poll. So you've completed the test day process, the check-in process. You're seated at your workstation. Oops, I think I've jumped ahead, sorry. What are the most common ID issues that prevent examinees from testing on exam day? I'll give you a few minutes to make your selection. That is correct. So all of the above, you need to make sure that your name matches, otherwise you will likely be turned away. If your ID is expired, you will be turned away. And if your ID was not issued by a government agency, you will be turned away. These are the three most important things to remember. Okay, now we're going to talk about the test day and the breakdown and what you can expect. And as Tyler mentioned, all start times are 8 a.m. regardless of where you're located. And the full length of the exam with breaks is about 7 hours and 30 minutes. So the exam will follow the traditional format that you see here. The instructions, the content, and the breakdown of the sections are as follows. So you'll be seated, and then you're presented with the test day certification. And this is a reiteration of the rules that you agreed to follow when you registered for the exam in the examinee agreement. You have 4 minutes to review this page, and in order to proceed to the exam, you must accept. Next, you have the 10-minute tutorial, and the tutorial demonstrates the use of exam functionality such as scrolling, highlighting, striking through, accessing the periodic table, marking your answers, reviewing questions, etc. The tutorial is optional, meaning you may select to skip it and go right into the chemical and physical foundations of biological systems if you choose. Once you begin CPBS, you have 95 minutes to answer 59 questions, and then you are offered a 10-minute optional break. We'll talk about the breaks a little bit more in a couple minutes. And then following CPBS or your break, you will begin critical analysis and reasoning skills, or CARS. CARS is 90 minutes long and contains 53 questions. Then at the end of CARS, you're offered a 30-minute mid-exam break, also known as the lunch break. And again, this break is optional. And after lunch, you will begin Biological and Biochemical Foundations of Living Systems. BBLS contains 59 questions, 95 minutes to complete. And then you're offered the second 10-minute optional break before Psychological, Social, and Biological Foundations of Behavior begins. That last section is 95 minutes long with 59 questions. Once all 4 sections are complete, you are presented with the void screen. This is a really important piece of your day. This is where you have 3 minutes to decide if you wish to score your exam or void your exam. Once you make this choice, it cannot be changed, undone, taken back. That's it. It's set in stone. Finally, we do request that you complete the end of day survey, which asks a series of questions and offers you the opportunity to give feedback to AAMC. So in all, you'll have 6 hours and 15 minutes of content time, including breaks. That's a total of 7 hours and 30 minutes of MCAT. All right, so next let's talk about the breaks. We know that these are a really important part of your test day. We know that as you are practicing and you are scripting your day, that you build the breaks in. So we want to make sure that everyone knows that there are several ways that you can take your breaks if you choose. You'll have a 30-minute mid-exam break as well as 2 10-minute breaks. If you don't want to take a break, you don't have to. You can stay in your seat and you can go right into the next section immediately. And this option is available for all 3 breaks. You can also remain in your seat when your break begins and take your break in your seat. But if you choose to sit in your seat during your break and not leave the room, you can't touch the noteboard, you can't touch the pen, you can't do anything. You can just sit there. If you intend to use the restroom, eat, or drink, you obviously need to leave the testing room and take the break. You don't have to take your full break, however. But if you come back from your break early, as soon as you are seated at your workstation, your exam must begin again. So as soon as you sit in your seat, the proctor will start your exam. We encourage you to bring your own food and drinks to the testing center. There will be space provided in the testing center or in their designated area for you to eat during your breaks. Test centers don't have refrigerators or microwaves, and examinees may not leave the test center to retrieve food from their vehicles, nor may you have anything delivered to you. So just to reiterate, you may not leave the test center floor or the building. You may not go to your car. You may not interact with anyone during your break. All right, so next we'll talk a little bit about the examinee agreement, and we've mentioned it a few times today, so I want to point out to you why it's important and why we keep referring back to it. So the AAMC's responsibility is to ensure the accuracy and the integrity of the MCAT exam. And this is because we want to provide a level playing field for all of you, for all medical school applicants, and that includes getting a standard score that med schools can consider when they're making their admissions decisions. One of the ways that we fulfill that responsibility is through the terms that are built into the examinee agreement. Each of you are required to certify that you've read and agreed to the examinee agreement during the registration process. Please read this very carefully as it outlines what is permitted leading up to test day, during the exam, and after. The examinee agreement also extends beyond test day and includes prohibiting online postings or discussions about content or questions from the exam. Security team actively follows up on all reported violations, and consequences range from a warning to canceled scores to a suspension from taking the exam to a report being sent to any medical school in which you were to apply. All right, next slide, please. And I'm going to share a tip with you all. And I know it's really, really tempting to go to Reddit, Discord, X, Student.net, and other study groups that you're a part of and talk about the exam as a release once it's over. However, please refrain from doing so in detail, which would violate the examinee agreement. And I'm going to share some examples so that you know right where that line is. You can comment on your general exam experience. You can talk about the test center conditions. You can talk about in general how you felt about a particular section, like CPBS was easier than I thought. But you may not mention a specific topic that was included in the exam, such as the content of a passage or the answer choices. For example, you could not post, "What did you put for such and such a question?" The moderators of the sites work closely with us, and they will often remove posts that violate the examinee agreement on our behalf, and they do report them. If you see posts that violate the agreement, you can also report them to MCAT security at aamc.org. Bottom line is, if you take the exam and then discuss the content with someone who's taking it later in the year, or even on the same day, you're potentially giving someone else an advantage to do better or earn a higher score than they otherwise may not have earned had they not been told what was on the exam, which creates an unlevel playing field for all applicants. As an additional note, we published the guidelines for discussion of the MCAT exam on our website, which very closely outlines what can and cannot be discussed. And a link to that page may be provided in the chat, but it's definitely in the document when we share the slides later. With that, I will hand it over to my colleague, Lauren Vergara, to talk about the MCAT prep resources.
Thanks, Kara. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Vergara, MCAT Prep Product Manager. I'm going to talk to you briefly about our free and low-cost prep products and resources. So the AAMC offers free resources to help plan and then practice for the MCAT exam. For planning resources, you can start with our guide to creating a study plan. We have a short description of the process on the AAMC website, and then an interactive version of the guide in our MCAT official prep hub, which is a platform used for practice tests and question sets and our free resources. We provide the What's on the MCAT exam content outline that contains the complete list of foundational concepts, content categories, skills, and disciplines you will need to know for test day. We have a free PDF version of the content outline on our website, and that outline is also available as a free course in the MCAT official prep hub, with links to Khan Academy lessons and other open access free textbooks covering those topics. So For example, you'll see the topic of amino acids and protein structures, and then links to Khan Academy lessons and links to free textbook chapters about amino acids and protein structures. Both the study plan guide and the content outline course are available by logging into the Prep Hub at the website on this slide. Then we also have practice products, including 2 free practice tests, and of course the Khan Academy MCAT collection that includes video lessons, articles, and practice questions. Our practice products fall into 2 types of categories: full-length practice exams and then smaller question sets. We have 6 full-length practice exams. We have a free practice exam and a free sample test. However, while the free practice exam provides scores, the sample test does not. But the sample test has something extra. After you take the test and go into the score report, we have videos on how to approach 4 CARS passage sets. So it's a great starting point for everyone. Among the question sets, we have subject-specific question packs, and we also have the 2 section banks and some smaller question sets. Additionally, we offer the CARS diagnostic tool, which can be used to identify strengths and weaknesses in the CARS section. This product also offers 2 videos on how to approach those passages, as well as reading strategies. And the best way to improve CARS performance is by practice. And this product has 28 passages and 169 questions, which is a bit more than is offered in our CARS question packs. We also offer our products in 4 different bundles. The most popular bundles are the complete bundle and the online-only bundle. The online-only bundle includes all of our online products, and the complete bundle includes the online products and then also comes with a printed copy of the official guide to the MCAT exam. So for the 2025 testing year, we introduced Section Bank Volume 2. Like our first section bank, it has 300 questions, 100 each from the 3 science sections. As we create new products, we include a rationale for all answer choices. So there's an explanation next to answer choices A, B, C, and D. Our older products have just one explanation for all the answer choices. Currently, all of the practice exams, all of the CARS products, and this new section bank have that explanation for each answer choice. The new section bank is included in the online only and complete bundles. So if you took the exam in 2024 or earlier, you might notice a few slight updates to the exam interface for the 2025 testing year. There's a few minor cosmetic updates, but we also added a basic zoom function so you can zoom in and out on content just like you would in a browser. We added the ability to change the background color to a black background with white text or a salmon background with black text. The default color scheme will still be the white background with black text, but now you have options to change it to. We also added a blue highlighter option in addition to the yellow highlighter that we already had. So now there's 2 highlighter colors. You can practice with these updates in the MCAT official Prep Hub. All of the AMC practice exams have these updates incorporated, including the 2 free practice exams. And we've received some advanced questions asking about studying for the exam and how to get started. We presented a webinar on January 27th called Start Your MCAT Prep Right with Proven Learning Strategies with medical education learning specialist, Dr. Shavana Wynn. In the webinar, she shared evidence-based active learning techniques and how to get started on preparing. She also shared ways to incorporate some of the AMC's free resources into your study plan. We will provide a link to the recording in the chat. We also wanted to mention an upcoming webinar for those interested in learning about the Preview Professional Readiness Exam. We will be hosting a preview webinar on Thursday, March 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern. This webinar is intended to introduce you to the preview exam, what the exam tests, how to know if you should take it, when to schedule the exam, and also resources to help prepare and get ready for test day. We're putting a link in the chat to register for that webinar. And then last, I'd like to share some other resources. The Pre-Med resources page provides a calendar of pre-med events and guidance on how to apply through AMCAS and finance medical school. There are also recorded webinars on the fee assistance program, the preview professional readiness exam, and webinars with medical students on how they prepared for the MCAT exam. And with that, I will close out and turn it over to Dawn for the Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Lauren. So we've added some extra time for questions, and we'll answer as many as we can. We'll also be joined by some other members of our MCAT team to help answer your questions. And just keep in mind, we're going to prioritize our MCAT related questions, because we've received lots of questions prior to today's presentation, some of which were very similar, and I hope that we've been able to answer many of these during the presentation. We also received a lot of questions in advance about application timelines and taking the MCAT exam, as well as how late you can take the MCAT exam. So there's 3 things that you should know about MCAT timelines and deadlines. Now, Tyler mentioned during his presentation the Medical School Application Requirements Online Guide, also known as MSAR. So we want to reiterate that every medical school publishes the latest MCAT exam dates that they will accept scores from in MSAR. And you can find that at aamc.org/MSAR reports. Okay, next you want to know that your medical school deadlines. So these are going to differ for each school, and you can find those deadlines on each school's websites in MSAR, as well as the deadlines on each school's websites. So 2 options there. Okay, finally, for those of you who've been asking about the timing of your MCAT, for the first AMCAS applications go to medical schools, this typically occurs in late June. So you're going to want to time your exam so that you'll have your scores back in time to submit. So you want to visit aamc.org/AMCAS for when the application opens, and then the first submission is going to go out to the schools. Okay. All right. So now let's get to some questions. The first question, we've actually got quite a few questions for Katie about scheduling an exam with accommodations. Katie, can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yes. So a couple of points to make. In order to schedule your exam with accommodations, you have to have been approved for those accommodations. So once you get approved for the accommodations, and just to clarify, all of the information regarding scheduling with accommodations is on our website. There's a web page specifically about scheduling with accommodations. But you will reach out to Pearson VUE, who administers the exam. They have a team that will help get you scheduled with your approved accommodations once they're approved. You have to be approved at least 15 days prior to your preferred exam date in order to request scheduling on that exam date. Again, this is all spelled out on the website. One aspect of the question that we got was, do I have to schedule an appointment, a standard appointment prior to getting approved or prior to scheduling? You do not. You have an option. You can schedule a standard appointment and then wait for your accommodations determination. And then once you're approved, request to have those accommodations applied to that appointment you already scheduled. Or you can get approved for accommodations and then request scheduling through the usual process. It really kind of depends on your particular circumstances and the timing of it all, which direction to go as far as scheduling a standard appointment beforehand or not. But you do have the option. There's not a requirement one way or the other. Important thing to pay attention to is the timeline again. Make sure that you're looking on the website, considering your preferred test date, and getting your accommodations application materials submitted in time for you to get a determination to be able to apply it to a test date, that has the time frame that you want. So again, go to the website, check out the time frames, and then there's a page on there about scheduling with your approved accommodations. And you'll also get that information with your decision letter.
Okay, great.
Okay,
thank you.
thanks.
So, question for Kara. We've got some questions that have come up. If you can talk a little bit more about the IDs and how that works with making sure your ID matches and names on the ID, all of that.
Yep. So I saw a couple of questions in the chat specifically asking about middle names. So your middle names are not compared on your IDs. It's primarily your first and last name. So for the individual who had asked, if my name is Ashley Nicole Smith and it says Ashley Smith, is that okay? Yes, that should be fine. Just whatever you register for on the MCAT registration page needs to match what's on your government issued ID. So think legal name, okay? In the MCAT registration, you're going to put your legal name.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have a lot of questions about if students can bring water in the exam room.
That's me also. So that's a great question. No, you cannot bring water or snacks or gum or anything into the exam room. All food and drink needs to be stored in your locker, can be accessed during breaks. All food that you wish to consume needs to be brought by you. There is not a microwave, there's not a refrigerator. In some situations, you may have received an accommodation to have a water bottle with you. In that case, you may have your water bottle inside the testing room, but that does require a specific application for accommodations. But in general, no food or drink are permitted in the testing room.
Thank you. Okay, a couple questions for Tyler. First, do you recommend using a computer or a phone to register? And then second, if you have a recommendation on that one, and then second, can you talk a little bit more about the waiting room and how that works?
Yeah, so the for the first one, I personally always recommend using a computer. That's just me. I mean, I think you'll find that most of our websites will work on a mobile device and or a tablet or something like that. But personally, I always recommend using a computer. It's just the most stable, and I just find it the most helpful when you're trying to quickly move through registration and move on to scheduling an appointment. So, again, that said, you should still be able to use our systems on a mobile device, even if I don't think it's the best user experience. As for the waiting room, now that I don't have a slide behind me, I think maybe let me take a different approach, right? Because like the waiting room is very much, if you think of it like a room that has a door that lets you schedule your exam, you could think of it as up until 11:50 a.m. Eastern time. So that's 10 minutes before scheduling opens. You will, if you show up anytime before those 10 minutes, you'll be placed in this large room and you could just kind of sit there and with no benefit given to you for having gotten there earlier than someone else. So if you get there, let's say quarter till noon, great, you're in there. If you get there at 11:40, 8:50, that's fine too. Everyone goes in the room. Now at 11:50, so that is to say 10 minutes before opening, right on the dot, everybody in the room at that moment will be given a number randomly from 1 to however many people are in that room. And that happens right at 11:50. And then a second or two later, when the next person comes in, they will be given whatever the next number in that sequence is. So that's why we tell you it's a good idea to show up at least 10 minutes early. So you're in that initial group, but there's really no benefit to showing up more than, much more than 10 minutes early. So please don't log in and spend an hour just sitting there or anything like that. That's not going to be helpful to you. Just aim to be in a few minutes before that 11:50 time when we assign those initial numbers for queuing.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Lauren, does everyone receive the same exam questions?
Tyler,
Or
you wanna take that
Tyler,
one?
or
Is
whoever
that a
would like to
question?
take that one.
If the question is about the exam questions on test day as opposed to Lauren's, who would be more focused on test prep, and I'm sure she can answer any specific questions about that.
Yeah.
We do not really disclose anything about our exam, how we administer the exam. So there's no guarantee, no, not at all, that you're going to see the same questions. So I guess that's the simplest way to answer that. And any additional information I'm not going to share. Sorry.
worries. Okay, Tyler, while we've got you real quick, can you talk a little bit more
Sure.
about what it means to void your exam?
Oh yeah, sure. Good question, and thank you. So so let me take a step back. Every time you sit down to take the exam, you complete all 4 sections. And at the very end, when you complete the final content section of the exam, you'll be given the option to void that exam. So that means that's your one opportunity to kind of take a few moments to think about your performance that day and see if you want that exam scored, right? If you say, yes, I want my exam scored, you're going to get a score for that exam, and that score will stay with you. You can't later void it. If you decide, you know what, I'm not feeling well, maybe I didn't feel great about how this section went or something like that, and you choose to void your exam, you will not receive a score for that exam. It will not be reported to medical schools or anything like that. So it's like, other than the fact that it counts as an attempt at the exam, it's like it didn't happen. Nobody will know that you took that exam and then voided it. So it's just your opportunity to kind of gauge how you're feeling about it and decide if you want that to be those scores to be released.
Okay.
Anything else, Donner? I keep going off camera and then coming back, so
I
I'm
know.
happy to
I'm
stay
sorry.
on it.
I'm
No,
going
no
through
worries.
these sort of randomly as they're coming in.
All good.
I think that's it at the moment.
Okay,
Call you
no
back. If I
worries.
call you
I'm
back,
still here.
yeah. Thank you. All right. Question for Katie. Can you talk a little bit more if medical schools are informed if you utilized accommodations on the exam?
Yes, sorry, it was my video was not coming on. No, the scores for MCAT exams taken with accommodations are no different than scores reported for exams taken without accommodations. So we don't share anything with medical schools about your accommodations application, about your accommodations, what were used on the exam. So no.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Bear with me. We've got lots of questions here. Okay, this one is for Lauren. Lauren, can you talk a little bit more about some of the visual changes that you were talking about before with like highlighting and things of that nature?
Sure. So you'll only notice the changes if you have taken the exam in 2024 or before, or use the practice exams. But for 2025, there are a few cosmetic changes, like some tweaks to color, things like that. But then there's a few new features, which is being able to zoom in and out on content, just like in a browser. There's a blue highlighter now instead of just yellow. And you have the option of doing 2 different backgrounds. You can do a dark background, which is black with white text, and then a salmon background with black text. So we're pretty happy about the new features, and we think people will be pleased with these new features. And you can practice with all of them in the Prep Hub, including with our 2 free practice exams.
Great, thank you. Okay. A question about breaks and the timing of the breaks. Are the breaks timed, and does the next section start automatically? And if you're late back from a break, are you penalized?
Excellent question. Yes, the breaks are timed. And if you are late returning from a break, it does take away from your exam time. So you must monitor your break time and make sure to get back on time. And Dawn, while I have the floor, let me clarify a couple of other things that we were seeing in the chat. When registration opens on February 19th, it will not close again. It will stay open. So on February 19th, you can register for March, April, May, June, July, August, September. If you want to come back in May and try to get a date in September, you can do that. Once it opens in February, it remains open through the end of the testing season. Okay, so you're not time bound in that one day.
Great.
And then another thing, I saw a lot of questions about scratch paper. So
Just gonna bring that up.
Yeah, when you get to the testing center and you're taken into the room, they're going to give you a wet erase note board with 9 pages in it, and you can use that throughout your exam to take notes, to figure out equations, to get your thoughts, to doodle, whatever helps you be successful during the exam. If you fill up all the pages and you need another one, raise your hand, they'll bring you one. If your pen runs out of ink and you need a new one, raise your hand, they'll bring you one. The only thing that you cannot do is erase anything from that noteboard. And you also cannot take that noteboard outside of the testing room or the testing center. So that belongs to Pearson VUE. They will collect it from you at the end of your exam. So I hope that clarifies questions about the notes.
Okay. While I have you on here, can you talk about clocks at testing centers and how you can effectively time your breaks?
Yeah. Okay, guys. So I'm going to be really transparent here. The clocks at the testing center on the wall are analog clocks, meaning they have the numbers that go around in the circle to tell the time. It's not a perfect science because they may or may not be completely aligned with the palm vein scan and your computer. The best that I can say is you are responsible for managing your time using the clock that is on the wall in the lobby of the testing room, because you cannot have access to watches during the exam. To be safe, allow yourself a couple of minutes to get back early. Okay, consider that there could be other people also in line to check back in, even though everyone doesn't start or finish at exactly the same time, there could be a line. So there are clocks in every testing center in the lobby for you to manage your time.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Sir, any particular international eligibility needed for the MCAT exam? Anyone want to take that? No?
Yeah, Don, I can take that one in terms of eligibility. We do not have specific eligibility rules for international students beyond what we have for the US and Canadian examinees. So nothing, so that's all to say, no, there's no additional requirements for international students.
Okay. Great. And how do admissions officers view multiple attempts on the exam? So I have some insight on that. If anyone else wants to jump in, what I'm going to provide that I have here is that we've got about 10% of examinees retake the MCAT in a given year, but most medical schools really look at multiple attempts in various ways. And some take an average, others take the most recent or the best score. They might be looking for improvement, but really your best bet is to look at the MSAR. That will give you the most complex information. And we talked about the MSAR earlier. That's aamc.org/MSAR or MSAR reports. And that's where you can get the most complex and dynamic information. And if anyone else has any additional insight on that, feel free to chime in. Just checking for any additional questions at this point. Any calculators have come up in the chat. Are students allowed to bring calculators into the testing center, or do they provide calculators?
Calculators are not needed nor necessary for the MCAT. So you have the scratch paper, but you should not have a need for a calculator.
Okay, great. How about at the end of each section, if students have spare time, are they allowed to double check all their answers or modify them?
Yeah, I could take that question. So as long as you're within the same exam section, so if you're in your cars section and you have a few extra minutes, then yes, you can remain in that section. You can go back to your work. You can review any questions you weren't sure of or that you may have marked for future or additional review. In the exam, you can flag something if you're not sure and come back to it. So the simple answer is yes, until your time runs out or until you leave the section, you can certainly revisit the previous questions and change your answers if you feel you would like to do so.
We talk a little bit more about MCAT scoring, particularly if they expire.
I'm not sure exactly of the context of the question. I think this is again, I think it's worth reviewing the MSAR resource to understand where you are personally applying in the medical schools, which MCAT exam scores they'll accept. So I think it depends on the individual and on where that individual is attempting to apply. Does that answer the question, Dawn, as we understand it?
I think so.
Okay, great.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I think we are almost ready to wrap this up. I'm just checking for any final questions we haven't addressed. Okay, one more thing. Are there any type of religious exceptions if students are unable to attend on a Friday or Saturday for the exam? Would they make an exception to register on a different date?
So the exam is administered mostly on Fridays and Saturdays. We've found that is acceptable to most of our examinees. And so if you, for example, can't test on a Saturday or vice versa on a Friday, you should be able to find a date either the previous day or the next week or something like that that will work for you. So just, keeping in your personal needs in mind, I would recommend you just choose a date that does work for you. You should hopefully, our calendar should allow you to find a date that does. And I think I would also say, of course, if you find yourself in a position where you have questions or concerns about any of that, I would recommend you reach out to us at MCAT@aamc.org. Let us know what your questions or your individual situation is, and I'm sure we'll be happy to talk you through it to provide you sort of an individualized answer for that question.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay. All right. But earplugs or any kind of headphones that students can bring? Just Kara, one last note on that.
Yep. So the test center will provide headphones for you. They also have foam earplugs. If you would like a pair of foam earplugs, just ask for them. But you may not bring any headphones of your own.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I am going to thank you all again for joining us today. And I'm going to hand this back to Jennifer to close us out.
Great, thank you. Please do give us your feedback on today's presentation by filling out the evaluation that will pop up on your screen as soon as we end. We did record the session and we'll email you once we post the archive. On behalf of the AAMC, have a wonderful day.